So what's the deal with my West Marches? I wanted to make a video about my West Marches in general. I talk about it quite a lot on Twitter and the socials and Substack, and I've been pretty effusive about it. But I wanted to kind of break it down and explain what's going on with it, some of the things I've been doing with it, and where the inspiration came from, as well as what I've learned. So, first, I want to briefly just define what a West Marches is. It is a player-led sandbox campaign where the players dictate what goes on in the game, and I take on more of a referee sort of role in terms of where the story goes. There's no real backstories to speak of, but the players decide everything. They pick the time that works best for them, they pick the avenues they want to explore, and they generally control the flow of the game. And that gives me a chance to prepare better for whatever they want. There are others who have actually explained this much more succinct than I just did, and I'm going to link to them in the description. The first is the thing that got me interested in learning what West Marches was, which was the Running the Game series from Matthew Colville. He, in general, and his videos are why I started running D&D for my friends. His video series on running the game taught me that I can actually do it. There's nothing holding me back but me, and that it's not nearly as hard as I might think, and to stop psyching myself out. That's kind of the gist of that series. And in that series, he has one video called The West Marches, in which he cites this article, this blog series from Ben Robbins over at Ars Ludi, again, linking below. And he mentions, he kind of lays out what the whole thing is, this grand experiment. And from Ben Robbins himself, he had 3 tenets that were very important to him for running this West Marches experiment. And Matt Colville kind of reiterates these in his video. There was no regular time. Every session was scheduled by the players on the fly and worked about at the best times that they could be available. And there was no regular party, which means that each game could have a pool of a few people, but the game itself could have like dozens upon dozens of players. There was also no regular plot, and the idea being that the players' activities, their actions, are what the story actually is. And that stood out to me. I liked it. But at the time, I kind of put a pin in it in the back of my mind, and it's like, I'll come back to this later. I just want to learn how to run the game. And what kind of led me back to this is that I got real tired of scheduling games, by which I mean doing all the work of it. So like, hey everybody, are you able to play? Are you able to play? Are you able to play? Can you play? What time? Oh, is this time good for you? Well, how about you? No, it's not good for you? Like, you get it. It's the DM's bane, if you will, scheduling. I also wanted something that was more of a persistent setting, and something that could develop lore through player action. I also wanted a game that wouldn't end when people lost interest. And this is kind of a key aspect of what got me started into diving into West Marches. A lot of campaigns die, somewhere between levels 4 to 5. A lot of them do, or at least in my experience. And it boils down to scheduling or random interest. You'll have a party of maybe 6 to 7 that you start off with. Ambitious, I know. But over time, the key players who are in this group of 6 or 7 will just stop playing. And then the rest won't have their much needed barbarian or fighter or frontliner. And then suddenly things will start to drop off as like, oh no, they're not here. I don't want to be here. And eventually it just cascades to a campaign that's done. And then you start a new one. And you have to come up with a new setting, a new lore, and all this sort of stuff. Not fun. So I got tired of all that. And so West Marches seemed to be the natural thing. So read the articles from Ben Robbins, rewatched the video from Matt Colville, and then decided to make one. I got right to work. Sort of. I just didn't know exactly where to start. So I needed something like a hook, something to make this thing all work narratively, something that could be fun, and an idea that could be intriguing enough. And so this idea for the Halfhand Adventurers Guild was born from this. I needed a quick way and a humorous way to develop low prep scenarios. And at the time when I was coming up with this, I was not necessarily feeling nostalgic, but reminiscing about my time working in temp agencies when I first moved out here to California. And remembering how just like weirdly corporatized and not great that felt. So I thought, well, that might be funny. Like, what if adventurers in a fantasy setting for D&D were just gig workers? And so I kind of created this guild setup where adventurers could go on quests based off of assignments from a temp agent. And I made a prototype and we ran it, and it was fun. And I kind of went all out with the temp agency aesthetic. I had brochures, I had printouts, and contracts that the players would sign, like, all this treasure, da-da-da. And I went a little bit overboard with it. And at the end of it, when I was kind of debriefing, the idea was there, and that core concept worked. But, if scaled back, it would actually be quite fun. So I did that. I needed a figurehead, like a kind of a character figurehead. So, something to kind of put a masthead onto this adventuring guild, this conceit. And I like the idea of important NPCs who kind of mascot a thing and just gallivanting around the world. So I used a Hansel Halfhand, a 20th level wizard that I've been kind of dorking around with and tossing into various games that I've run. He's kind of like my version of Volo if he were a wizard. And I figured it would be fun having something like that. So here's this eponymous character who's running these guilds as franchises, and adventurers work under him. Fun stuff. He would represent an endpoint. Because another thing I wanted to do in this thing, this West Marches, as part of the players making the lore, is have a game in which, years from now, new characters can reference current activities that happened in our game. So suddenly players of higher levels will become legendary, things like that. The lore would be what was built in the present and could be enjoyed in the future. So Hansel Halfhand represents this. He's level 20. He's done his adventuring. He was a player at one time in this idea of the world. So that's kind of what the West Marches was, what I wanted to do with it. Very fun, very exciting. And fast forward 3 years. I've been doing this West Marches for about 3 years now. And it's been a blast. Been very exciting and fulfilling, but also very educational. I have learned I've learned a lot going into this. And just to kind of wrap up this video, I want to share with you some of those things I learned right quick. And I even have a more detailed Substack post for this, linking all in the bottom commenty thing. One of the main things I learned in the 3 years of running my West Marches is that your Dungeon Master notes, DM notes, whatever you want to call it, your prep, is a reference and not a script. And this kind of is the biggest journey in my 3 years, is learning how to prepare for a game like this and how to let go of some things. When I first started running my own games of D&D, I had paragraphs of scene description, NPC description. You'd have blocks of text that were like this, like on a paper, not very good. Not bad. But I'm trying to run a game. I'm not trying to be a novelist here. And so in time, I started to learn that some of these details can be made up on the fly. Some of these things can be improv at the table, and that maybe I should get better at improving those things. So I started doing that. I started scaling back the things I wrote. Suddenly, paragraphs of scene description became a sentence. Suddenly, that sentence became a bullet point that was an improper sentence, just like, guy does this, or, well, it's actually kind of a proper sentence, but guy this, da-da-da. So I kind of went up and down. I did the extremes. I went way, started with too much and then went to too little. And through that back and forth, found out that what I need most is to be able to reference quick the key elements of the scene that we're playing in, the particulars that the players will need, and any particular information that might be relevant. And then I also needed to divorce some of these pieces from scenes, or not anchor them so much. I could go on, but the gist is scale back, do less. Not necessarily no prep. I like the idea behind no prep in general, but I also can't help but do some prep, because there's still that nature of me, that creative side that wants to put creative things in there, do a little prep, have some stories sneak in. So low prep is kind of my solution. Prep what's needed for the thing, and just give myself the pieces in a way that I can kind of weave them in the moment. My favorite idea, or my favorite visual of this, is in Wallace and Gromit, when the dog is putting the tracks before the train, just, and sometimes that can be a panicky thing, but in this case, it's more of, that's fine. That's a natural part of this. There are some things that just don't need to be anything but a reference, or some things that don't need to be anything but a improv. And so there's that. There's also, as a corollary to that, note-taking. Note-taking became very important, and it's something I've been very bad at. And so these 3 years taught me that the note-taking is the king. You can't imagine, or maybe you can if you've been a DM before, trying to recap, debrief from a session and not remembering most of what you did. Doesn't happen often. I mean, I'm not so forgetful that I forget the whole session, but details. Like, did so-and-so pick up this particular item that I'd seeded into the world? No, they didn't. But you can easily forget that if you don't take the notes. So I learned how to take better notes. Not necessarily exciting, but important. And to make that helpful to myself, I actually made a little sheet, a session note tracker, in which I could keep track of XPs I was dishing out. I could keep track of each thing that happens. Anytime an action was taken, I would write it down. I'd maybe attach a date to it, and so on. And as we moved over to one-to-one time, some of that stuff got easier because I could attach days to it. Suddenly, I know what the players did on Saturday because the session took place on a Saturday in world. Things like that. And maybe there'll be other videos with like one-to-one time and other things that I've learned about it. But I think you get a picture. You kind of get this whole sense of the Halfhand Adventurers Guild, my West Marches that I've been running. It's been really fun. And there's so much still that I'm learning and doing. In fact, I've just added 2 new Dungeon Masters. And we're going to get them started in their own sessions. And eventually we're going to be trying to do things where we have sessions together at the table, just in 2 rooms. We're going to be running concurrent sessions on same days. And there's just some logistical things that are kind of exciting. And I want to share those here. I hope you enjoy. And I hope you don't mind my rambly nature. I normally like scripting things out a lot. It gives me sort of a peace of mind. But I think kind of going off the cuff for some of these is going to be a better, more natural way to do these videos. So if you, just as a point of order in these videos for the future, if you see little cuts here and there, there's just moments where I've goofed or flubbed or need to make a cut in there. I'm going to try to keep the YouTube cut to a minimum, but understand that sometimes long gaps just aren't pleasurable to watch necessarily in YouTube. And I do understand that. I am an editor by trade, so long gaps of could be shortened, could be tightened. I think that's it. I'm looking at my notes here. I don't see anything more about it. I want to eventually talk about why I picked 5e and why I eventually glommed 5.5e onto my game. What I still like about it despite its problems, and by God, there are a lot of problems in 5.5e. And why I went to one-to-one time. There's drama about one-to-one time. It's been fascinating to watch on Twitter. And then why I chose multiple dungeon masters. And just kind of exploring the mess and the learning experience of the West Marches. Anyways, that's my video. I hope you enjoy your day, and be well. And I'll see you around.